I screwed that up, didn't I, Erin? Didn't I? I hit it too many times. I hit the button too many times. I don't know if you noticed. So we were both sitting there staring.
Should I be concerned that I
people were watching us
don't know
stare
if we
around.
screwed it up or not?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all right. It's not like I get a lot of practice doing this. It's not like I'm on StreamYard like 4 or 5 times a month already. That's my excuse. I'm going with it. So, hello everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to have another episode of DevRelish. My name is Brian Rinaldi, and my co-host. I'm a developer experience engineer at Launch Darkly, and my co-host. You can introduce yourself.
Erin, I'm Erin McHale-Steeples, and I am soon to be not fun employed. I'm in my last few weeks of fun employment.
I know, right? Wait, you got to like really take. Why are you here? You should be off, like having fun.
I already am really bad at it. I did a very good job of being offline last week. So if anybody wants to geek out with me, I did play Starfield way too much. So if anybody is playing Starfield,
I need to get back into that. I started it and then I
it's really good. I will say I kind of avoided it because I can get very bored very easily in video games, and I was like, oh, I'll do something else. And then honestly, I got sucked back in for the online people. So I've been playing on Xbox. So honestly, I slept like 3 hours.
If it was multiplayer, I'd join you, but I can't. So it starts very slowly. It's taken me a long time to get through all that. Anyway, it's a sidetrack. It's taken me a long time to get through all the intro stuff. So I'm like, okay. Eventually,
once you get like past level 10, it's like then gets really fun if you're an open world person.
I am. I will get back to it. I promise. So before we invite our guest on board, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. So Data Protocol, if you don't know about it already, is like a developer engagement platform for DevRel. So it's basically like Roku for developers. It's free to use, and you can check them out at dataprotocol.com. Basically, you can create whole playlists of material for your community. It's really great, like easy to use platform. So we got a demo of it. It was really cool. So you should check it out, dataprotocol.com. Thank you, Data Protocol, for sponsoring DevRelish. So with that, we are going to invite up Megan Lieu. So Megan is a data advocate at I'm like messing it up. Deep. It's not DeepGram. There's so many like different company names that are so similar. I keep thinking DeepGram. Is there a DeepGram? There may be a.
There is a DeepGram.
There is.
But Megan's at a Deepnote.
But Megan's at Deepnote.
Tell
us about Deepnote. Tell us about yourself, Megan, and about Deepnote.
Hey everyone, I am Megan. Thanks for inviting me. I am very new to the DevRel space, less new to the data science space, and bringing those two things together is what brought me to Deepnote about 7 weeks ago. And I'm doing developer relations there, creating a lot of content to raise awareness for our product, help our users use Deepnote better. And what Deepnote is a cloud-based data science notebook that is super collaborative. So you can think of Jupyter notebooks, but multiple people can work in a notebook at the same time, which is a godsend for data scientists who are trying to work together. So that is a little bit about me and about Deepnote.
Very cool.
I mean, like there's so many cool notebook tools out there right now, and it's like that collaborative nature is like really exciting. Like it's like very much like Jupyter notebooks on steroids, if you ever use that.
Yes, that's Jupyter notebooks on steroids is a much more succinct way of describing it.
Yeah, that's very cool. So so going back to like how you obviously you started not even in tech, right? Like, so I was reading about your background. You started in finance.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how, like, what drew you from finance into tech and eventually into DevRel.
Yeah. I studied finance in school. And so that pathway from studying in the business school to becoming an investment banker, that pipeline was super strong at our business school, as I'm sure it is for a lot of other business schools. It's either investment banking or consulting. And the first role that I had outside of school, once I graduated, was being a financial analyst at a consulting firm. So on any given day, maybe some days I'll say I'm a consultant, other days I would say I'm a financial analyst, but pretty much the role that I landed once I graduated was a marrying of those two. So for all intents and purposes, I was like, by my alma mater's definitions, I am successful. But I hated the work. It was spreadsheet hell, reporting up to like 5 different levels of managers to get a deliverable across the finish line to a very finicky client. And that's probably not, it's a generalization to say that all consultants have a workflow like that. But for me, being more on like the services side, especially a service that I didn't really enjoy, it made it hard to report to work every day, to say the least. And so I graduated and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to enjoy because I spent 4 years studying this. Like my previous internships were doing finance as well. So everything that I had was leading me up to this exact job. But for some reason, I didn't feel much fulfillment. And so I had to go back to the drawing board after a period of being super burnt out and ask myself what experiences and strengths I have. What do I even enjoy outside of finance? Who am I outside of finance? To be a little bit more like dark about it. But those are the kinds of questions that I had to ask to chart my next path, because I didn't want to go down another 6-year period thinking that I was going to do something and then get cold feet at the end, right? So had to really evaluate what I'm good at, what I was interested in. And those two things brought me to data analytics because I had taken like 2 courses in school, but I was like, you know what? Those were the only 2 courses outside of finance that I took. So I know something about data, and data is tech, right? So I was like, yeah, I want to go down the tech route because it seemed a lot more fast paced and potentially more fulfilling than what I was previously doing. And so I went down that path and have not looked back since. So went from data analytics to data science and now DevRel. And so that path has been fairly linear in that each role has been different and each role has built upon each other. And that has made it a very fulfilling journey. But by no means have I like figured it out completely. Like, I don't know if there is such thing as like a dream job or like a calling as to what you're supposed to do. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying taking previous skills, having them build on each other, and just applying it to where I am at the moment. And where I am at the moment is hectic, but I'm learning so much in this field of DevRel. And if you had asked me like 3 months ago if I thought that I would be in this kind of role, I would have told you that I would probably still be in data science. But I'm glad that it has taken me to where I am today.
Yeah. It's, we just had in the comment actually, Maddie's wrote that I wonder what the percentage of people cross into tech from completely different fields is. And, I think we've talked about this in other episodes plenty, but both of us came from different fields, came from outside of we didn't do computer science.
Yeah.
I think did we have any guests that started in computer science?
Kevin Winnery had, I think, we joked that he had the most computer science background. And it was like that, but it was like IT, I believe, or he started 2 semesters of computer science.
Something like that, because it's so I'd be curious if first of all, I think it's common in tech to like, to get in from some other field. But also it's also, I think, in DevRel, you find it's an even higher percentage. I feel like when I talk to DevRel folks, it's very rare I meet a DevRel person who's like, "Oh yeah, I was a computer scientist."
Right.
But I'd question, and Megan, I'm curious, like if you found this in your job search, like I know you and I were going through the job search very similar times. And I was looking for developer relations jobs, dev advocate jobs, dev experience jobs. And I had folks that were point blank, like, you do not have a engineering background. Or I had one of them, I passed their technical exam and they still wanted me to do a second technical exam. And I was like,
That's
okay.
extra.
Or yeah, would get halfway through the process and they'd look and they'd be like, you don't have this experience. And I would be like, thank you. Like I could have told you this. Like I'm pretty transparent that I have a journalism degree, 2 journalism degrees actually.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I go back to journalism land. But did you experience kind of the same thing? And did you know that DevRel was your next adventure, or was it going to be data science again?
Yeah, that is such an interesting call out and something that I was curious about, because I felt like the roles that I interviewed for, I interviewed for 3. One was more of a data science role. 2 were DevRel community management roles. And those 2 were super informal, actually. These roles came to me because they were familiar with my content and my work on LinkedIn. And so I would like to think that content kind of spoke for itself in terms of getting my foot in the door. And then I don't know if it's because both were super young startups, and so they hadn't really developed out that hiring process. But for me, literally one of my interviews was just like 2 conversations. And they're like, here's a job. And I was like, wait, is this that easy? And then with my current job, it was more rigorous. It was like a 3-hour interview all in one go. Only with my CEO though. Like my company does not have a DevRel function. We don't have a marketing function. So he was really the only person that had a say, I guess, in me being hired. So he was the only one that I was really interviewing with. And so I was like, this cannot be typical of other DevRel interviews. So it's very interesting to hear your perspective, Erin. And I think that was just a factor of the fact that these roles they don't have a developer relations function built out. And so maybe they didn't know what they were looking for.
We talked about this a lot in the last episode, basically, that a lot of times, especially in smaller startups, like this is sometimes even their first non-engineering hire. And even if it isn't, they don't necessarily have a clear, it can be really difficult to go through the process because they don't necessarily have a clear idea of what it is they want from DevRel. So sometimes you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, what is this DevRel position going to be? And they're like, well, like they like list off 100 things. It's like, okay, we don't have a clear vision for it. It's just going to solve a lot of, we have all these problems in getting like exposure to developers and, on social media, and it's just going to solve all those things.
That was kind of the sentiment that I was getting from some of the companies I was interviewing with, and I sensed that this was probably a broader trend.
Yeah,
I think there's kind of this thing that happens in DevRel, and it's like I like to think of like, I really like Mary Thingvall, who was on this podcast earlier, and she has the triangle of experience, community, and advocacy. And I think that's a really great triangle to look at. But I mean, even during my own job search process, like I very much started on the community and advocacy side and then have slowly worked closer towards experience. So I put myself smack dab in the middle right now. And it gives you like a framework of like, where do you fit in this larger picture of what is DevRel?
Yeah, I use that triangle that you sent me so much. Not only when I was navigating the interview process with my company, because part of my interview process was creating a 30-60-90. And that 30-60-90, I framed it around like the three corners of that triangle.
Nice.
And so for me, that was a very nicely organized guiding document for somebody who had never experienced DevRel before. But also I use it to tell people that I know in my personal life, like what I do. So I'm like, there's awareness, enablement, and engagement. And so, yeah, that triangle has been super helpful in me developing my role together with my manager.
Yeah, Mary's work has been like instrumental in many
Mhm.
people's DevRel careers.
Mm.
She's, it's just so good. And anyway, and I'd say I'm curious because you both went through the job recently.
Mm.
Like I'd say in my experience, there is no typical DevRel interview process. Sometimes I feel like it follows a more traditional engineering role type process.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's more of like a marketing role. Sometimes it's a hybrid of both. Like sometimes you have no coding tests. Sometimes you have a coding test. Sometimes you have homework. Sometimes you have homework and a coding test. I mean, it's just I don't know that I've had any two sets of interviews alike. The only commonality I find in general is that you have way too many interviews as part of it. It's like, they'll list out the process that we like, oh, hey, here's the process. You're going to interview with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like, I guess in a startup, it's only limited by the size of the company, right? But
Right. That's
But
what
you only have so many people to go through.
Yeah.
Startup.
yeah, but they make you
And
go
yeah,
through
at some
everybody.
startups, I feel like I've interviewed their entire team. Like on some parts of this process, I still feel like I've interviewed more people than I was like, what? Like,
Exactly.
but I think I love this question that Maddie Two Shoes adds in here of like, do you think that being a DevRel for a vendor is vastly different than for other companies? And I have my take on it, but I'm curious to hear y'all's takes on this.
I've wondered that myself. That's such a good question, Matt. I can only offer my perspective from working on the vendor side. And prior to this role, I was a data scientist at another vendor. And this past week, I went to a conference where it was all vendors. So my head is very like vendor space right now. But I don't know. This is a question for you guys. Like, do you think that it is more common to have DevRel roles at vendors because they are advocating on behalf of a tool or a product, right? Like, how do you what does developer advocacy look like in like a Google well, that's a product, I guess, but
yeah,
I don't know.
like a Discord where you're creator facing, or
Right.
Yeah. I have a spicy take here. Per usual.
Go for it. I still haven't come up with the graphic for the spicy take.
Yeah. Spicy takes here on my end is I actually don't think that it is any different at all if you're doing your job right and you're doing your job well. Because at the end of the day, and this is something I really hold on to from, I was in e-commerce before moving into DevRel, and that's actually my first community job. And it was open source community manager. But like, and don't be concerned that you could never, Maddie, because like I came from working very much with agencies and people and journalism facing, but like it is actually no different at all because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people and your audience. If you're in DevRel or developer relations or advocacy or developer experience is developers. Like I will fully admit, I sent a spicy email this morning of someone who scraped LinkedIn for emails. And they sent me a pretty formy email. And I was like, dude, why are you sending this? Where did you get my email? What are you doing? Like, this is so, and I kind of like pushed back on it. I was like, don't email me. Don't. Like, I am happy to help you.
They were marketing or
it was someone DevRel adjacent. So like DevRel, like founder, early stage startup adjacent. And I kind of felt bad because I was like, oh my goodness, am I grumpy for like pushing back on this email that I got? And then I was like, no, because like they were approaching me as if I was a vendor and they should have approached me like I was a human. And I think I have done DevRel at companies where I worked with both creators and vendors. So I was at Unsplash as a community manager for a while and worked with developers from there. And guess what? It's no different. It's because at the end of the day, like if you're doing your job correctly, and I think if you're doing a successful version of your job, like the end of the day, how do you make people successful? Like if it's a developer relations person, you want to make people do great work. And yes, Montreal Unsplash. This is like 2-3 years ago now, but yeah. Your
The
end of the day,
spicy
your
take
goals
needs the spicy pickle, right? I totally forgot.
Yeah.
to
Spicy pickle.
set it
That's
up
what I
already.
was
We need a
imagining.
spicy
We're supposed
pickle.
to have- There he is.
Yeah.
There's our spicy
But it's
pickle.
like, just don't just be a good person, and make the people you work with successful. And if you're being salesy, probably don't. And I'm glad to hear maybe it's not that spicy. Also, the Unsplash circle is apparently really small. Tell them all I say hi. It's a great team. I absolutely love them all.
Nice.
So I'd say my view is I don't think that's too spicy. I think it's really about I've always approached DevRel as a gotta be a two-way thing. Like I can't go to you asking for something, like you being the community, right? Or a community person. If I'm not there giving as well, right? Like I can't it's not DevRel is not it's just a one-way channel out. Like, and I think that's where like some of those interviews I think get stuck, right? Is they see it as like, okay, you're just gonna improve our like outgoing, like we're gonna suddenly get all kinds of exposure and we're gonna, and all this stuff like that. And it's like, no, but this is actually a two-way street. I mean, it like even the stuff on CFE like has no real benefit to the company, but they're supportive of me doing it because they understand that this is a give and take. And so doing stuff like this show or like some of the other things that I run for developers is part of the way I engage with the developer community on somewhat on the company's behalf, but also like in a way that gives back. So then when I go say, hey, I need X for lunch darkly, like from some, will you chat with me kind of, or will you come be in our conference or whatever? Then they're like, yeah, they know me, they know we're part of the community. We're not just taking, we're not just, so I think that's my perspective. It's just like about having empathy, number one, for like the people, your audience, and like trying to really help them, but also like being there for them, not just asking of them.
Yeah. I think it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you are serving humans at the end of the day, especially when you work in tech and it's all about the product and, like these product metrics and stuff. But if you don't put it in the perspective of the business and then like the people who support the business and the stakeholders, it has to come back. It has to come back to the people at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think Maddie followed up with when you're DevRel for vendors, seems like it would be hard to be impartial. Anybody have thoughts on that comment? Yes,
I do. I face it all the time. So I create a lot of content on LinkedIn, and it was actually only fairly recently that I got one of these comments, and I was surprised that it didn't come sooner. They were like, your channel has become very salesy these days. Is it because it's part of your job? And I was like, the unfollow button's right there. Like this is like my channel, and I hate to sound like, I can do whatever I want, but like literally I can do whatever I want. Like, but also people have to realize I wouldn't have taken a job at this company, whether that's DevRel or any other kind of job with this company, if I didn't believe in the product. And so even before I was in DevRel, I was a data scientist and I was posting about my company then. And so, yeah, people definitely get that perception that you are no longer impartial, that your voice and the company's voice are one and the same. And so curious how you guys navigate that.
I have journalism, like I lean into the journalism background. Like, so for those of you who don't know, I did come from the journalism world, studied both journalism in undergraduate and in grad school. And I actually need to update it now, but it's currently out of date. I have a now page on my website, which says like anybody I'm taking money from or companies I'm working with or organizations that I've been affiliated with in the past. There have been times where I have posted things that I have been flagged by the company that I work for, like, please don't post that. And I went, no, like, no, I have been asked that at a company. I also, you know, but I also do believe there is a difference between me as an individual and me as an individual representing the company. And so I try to add on, like, if it's a work post, be like, usually add it into my own context. So like, hey, I worked really hard on this. Come see how it works. Or I'm really proud of XYZ. Come see how it checks out. Like, and providing that little bit of context behind it, like, but still being like, full disclosure, they sign my paychecks. Like,
Yeah.
and I also
Yeah.
think with DevRel, and I think the Stripe team does this really well. Or like, this is years ago, I heard it from them, is they also acknowledge when their product was not the best. And I think that's okay to say.
I think, sorry, it's as I mentioned, it's, you know, somehow I always end up with boba tea on a DevRelish day.
Good choice.
It's merely coincidence. But Megan, you've got like an impressive water bottle there. Like it's like almost it's like the size. It looks massive. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, just getting hydrated.
So I've had this conversation actually recently because I've had folks like say like, oh, you know, I can only take a job in DevRel for a company, like a product that I'm super passionate about. And I'm like, I mean, I've been in DevRel a long time, and like the one thing, as in any kind of job, especially in tech, the one thing you can guarantee is that things will change. And so I can almost promise that you're not always going to be super passionate about it. And if you take that perspective, you're just going to be switching jobs a lot, because you know that, like, it's just you're not going to be able to remain that kind of continually passionate about it. And like the business objectives might change in a way, or the product might target, like, move more enterprisey or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, I need to still be an advocate of it. I can be honest, like Erin says, be upfront about like what are the situations where this is the best fit, and and acknowledge if it comes up like where we might not be the best fit, kind of thing. But I think I'm never going to pitch somebody as a DevRel on a product that I think is going to be bad for them, right? Like, I'm not going to, if it's not the right tool for whatever they're doing, I think, right, I'll say it. And that's part of being, I'm not sales. I'm DevRel. I don't have sales goals. That's why, I can be honest about that stuff. And that's important. But I also feel like, I can still advocate for something that I don't necessarily, not like super passionate about. All these tools like are great fits for the right types of things, and I can write about those kind of things. I can speak about those kind of things, and talk to developers about those without necessarily having to like just say, hey, I'm not as passionate about this job as I used to be, so about this tool as I used to be, so I'm going to be like, I'm out of here. So yeah, anyway, I don't know if that's a spicy take or not a spicy take, but that's just my perspective on it.
Spicy to me, because just the way my brain works, like I'm either all in or all out, right? Like, I'm so on extremes. So I'm just speaking from my own personal, how I know my brain works. But sure, as I go on in my career, I'm sure I'll realize that there are products that I'm working on that I'm not, I guess, like, I don't have to be passionate, but like I have to just subscribe to what the company is saying. But yeah, I think if it ever gets to the point where you like do not believe in the product, or like you don't believe in the direction that your company goes, you absolutely should not stay, you shouldn't stay like biased towards that product, and that's where your judgment as a human comes in. But yeah, that's this hot take for me, because there are going to be days where you're not like super jazzed about what you do or the company you work for. But you're still employed by them. So
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
I think like to kind of touch on that and like kind of, I'm probably in the middle of both of you. Like I'm probably smack dab in the middle. I have worked at companies where I hadn't even used their tool until 4 weeks before I joined the company in my final stage of the interview process. That was my last role. So I, again, learned machine learning on the fly, and my last role was in data labeling, very deep ML ops, but had never written a model before, had not done data labeling before, didn't understand what it was, and joined the role because of the mission. And once I started understanding the tech, got really into it and was like, this is amazing, and understood and saw the importance of it. In this time, this job search, like I have used the tool that I'm going to join another vendor company. I have used the tool before. I've set up the tool before at other companies. So, but I'm experienced at it. So I have that. But arguably there are companies in the interview process that were more familiar with their tools. But that wasn't a bigger draw to me because I kind of got to see behind the scenes in some of them. And I was like, whoa, your team is a hot mess. And the biggest thing I learned in my career path, like, and I think in this time around, is I really wanted to choose a team and a manager that like I felt like got me and like understood that. Like I've always kind of struggled with leadership, like having a really good manager or a really good direction was something that was really important to me in this next time around. And I think on that point, Maddie's point of, do you think it's fair that the company you work for gets to rent the audience that you spent years building up? Like, I love this question, and it's something that I've debated myself and gone back and forth. And I think it's fair with a caveat. If a company will ask me to post every single thing that they've done to my personal channels, no, it has to be a choice of mine to post it. Mm-hmm. So there have times like I can directly think of a company I was at years ago now, moved and did a lot of crypto projects. I'm not really into crypto. Some of them I thought were a little scammy. That's fine. I did not reshare any of the projects or the work that I did. And we had an agreement that I will not be asked to work on certain projects that don't align with my personal values. And that's okay. I still discussed crypto because that was a significant part of their audience, but I discussed it in a way that was very nuanced and coming from a lens of curiosity and understanding, which felt authentic to me and myself, but also was authentic to the company because there were people of that audience that had the same curiosities that I did. So I got to still be myself. And I think the minute that a company asks me to not be myself, that's when I need to know that I'm out. That's a hard no for me. Like, you're asking me to believe something I don't believe, shill a product that I don't want to shill. You get free claim on my LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, then I have a problem with that. But if I'm not doing work that I'm not proud enough, that I don't want it on my personal feeds, then I have to ask myself the question, am I doing the work that I want to be doing right now? Like, maybe do better work than Erin. And that's a personal thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to like kind of renting the audiences, I don't want to get back too deep into that. I actually want to talk about, because it came up in that Megan, you have like 80,000 followers on LinkedIn. You create a lot of LinkedIn content. I'm actually really, really curious because, okay, I will say, like, back when Twitter was just a mere dumpster fire and not whatever it's become now, like, it was bad, but it wasn't terrible. It was like, okay, I generally ignored. Like, I literally only showed up on LinkedIn to be like, yeah, okay, I'll approve you, because I've like let the invitations pile up, and then I'd hop back on. But now I think there's actually like a good audience, that like developer audience there now, that and maybe it's different, it's slightly different because if you're in data science. I don't know if data scientists tend to spend more time on LinkedIn or not, but as we're trying to transition to other channels, because there's not really an easy channel to reach all developers anymore. Like, I've been looking at LinkedIn. I just feel like I don't know how to use it right. So do you have, as somebody who's clearly learned how to use it right, would love your advice. Like, what are the tips and tricks for other DevRels on how can they use LinkedIn properly?
Yeah, please help me, because I used to block this platform. Like, I literally used to log in once a week because I'd be like, I'm not here to hear, it's always like,
Yeah.
Some Chad spicy take. Da 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 da.
You are not alone in that thought, and not alone in that question of like, how do I use LinkedIn? I don't think LinkedIn is inherently any easier or harder than any other platform to grasp. All those things you're saying, like, hey, I can't seem to understand how to use LinkedIn. That is me with Twitter. That is me with TikTok. And it just so happened that LinkedIn was, I mean, I dabbled in Instagram. And I think that taking my skill set from Instagram, which was taking good pictures and knowing how to storytell in using words in the captions, I brought those over to LinkedIn. But I don't think that that is the standard way of using LinkedIn. I took what worked for me and took my own flavor of Megan to my audience on LinkedIn, and that is what they associate with me now. And so the lesson out of that is what works for you is what is going to work for you. And so for me, like I said, I really like taking pictures and I really like storytelling, and that is the brand of my LinkedIn platform. And so that made it easy for me to stay consistent. And so if you can't find a way to stay consistent, that is like the foundation. It's finding what works for you so that you can do it on a regular cadence. And for me, that regular cadence was once a week at first. And then I figured out what works and what resonates well with my audience. And then I gradually picked that up to 2, and then 3, and then 4. And now I'm up to 7 somehow. And it, as with anything, it literally just becomes routine if you work at it every day. And so if you had asked me a year ago if I would have the muscle memory to do this every freaking day, I would have said, heck no. Like at that point a year ago, I was getting burnt out off of posting like 3-4 times a week. And now I've kind of just built up that muscle and figured out what works for my audience to stay consistent. So the 2 ingredients I always say are find something that you can authentically talk about so that it sounds like you talking rather than somebody else talking, and then do that consistently. And eventually you'll hit a couple of those posts that gain a lot of traction. And this advice, I think, applies to almost any other platform, right? Like if you can find something that you love talking about and love so much that you can do it consistently, then I think that's the secret sauce, right? But it's just, if I dig deep and I ask myself, how come I haven't cracked the code on Twitter yet? How come I haven't cracked the code on TikTok yet? It's because I just haven't wanted to. Like I haven't wanted to like figure out the audience is there, and so I'm not going to do that. And so that consistency piece falls off. Whereas LinkedIn, I just feel comfortable with that audience and comfortable enough to do it every day. And so that just slowly but surely builds upon itself. And every once in a while you hit that like viral-ish post, and that'll be like, oh yes, like that's the validation I needed to keep going. But that's my thought process behind it. Like there's nothing magical. It's literally figure out a way for you to tolerate it, and then like tolerate it a little bit more to the point where you're like, okay, I can see myself like regularly doing this and building it into your routine.
Do you post like, are they like tutorials? Are they just like stories? I mean, like, and how, like, what's, I guess I totally, I hear your point, but also like, is there, I never know, like, do you share longer posts, shorter posts? I mean, what,
Yeah.
Twitter had like this, the one thing that it had is that you had that very strict limitation of characters. So you kind of knew I had to condense everything for better or worse into this tiny little like box,
Which is what
basically.
I could never get to work for me, because I like writing a lot. I like, and LinkedIn is suitable for me in that way. I just like getting my thoughts out there, and by the end of it I have like 10 paragraphs and I'm like, okay, like I'll just do this. And then turns out people are okay with that, like with reading a lot, because not a lot, but like not a whole essay, but longer form. It does well on LinkedIn because other people do that too. So, and that's one of the reasons why I just never made it on Twitter, because I'm like, I have so many thoughts to share and I love sharing stories and writing, and the process of writing that story out, I love. And but that's not to say that if it works for my audience, that might not work for your audience. Like, I know so many people who go viral consistently off of like super short stuff. But it all depends on, like, you kind of have to train your audience in a way. Like, there's two forces. Like, you have to train your audience to get them used to the style of writing that you enjoy doing, but also you have to figure out what the audience likes. And so just by being a passive audience of the people that you are subscribed to, or that you follow on LinkedIn, you'll figure out like what your audience tends to react to, what they like reading. And so it's like a push and pull. You have to kind of contribute your voice to it, but also understand what voices they enjoy reading.
That's really good advice, because now that when you say that, I'm like, the platforms that I've done better on tended to be ones that I spent time there, like that I didn't just, goes back to my point earlier about you can't just be there like as a megaphone trying to like, here I am, here's what I want you to hear, goodbye, I'm out of here.
Right.
And so like the platforms that have worked for me are the ones that I've actually spent time on, that I'm there often, like more time listening than I am sharing, right? So
I think, like,
go ahead.
Oh,
Erin.
go ahead, Megan.
Go ahead.
Eventually, you all figure this out.
And I think that makes total sense. Like, thinking about it, I've actually like had more success on LinkedIn recently, but that's because I find myself running away from the dumpster fire that is tweet
X.
Yeah, X, whatever that dumpster fire is. But like in my last role, like the machine learning community is very huge on Mastodon. And so I was very consistent on Mastodon. And then once I left that job and I wasn't working so much, it's like I checked in on Mastodon, but the people I was super close with, I was like, well, I actually just talked to them on Discord. So I'm going to go bump into another Discord. And I mean, one of the random things I did today in my fun employment life was building back up. We have like a internet friends Discord, and it's like, making that somewhere that I actually want to be and in control rather than neglecting a lot more. And it's used for random stuff. But I actually have seen myself spending more time on LinkedIn lately, just because it's like, I do like it. But I have also been a lot heavier. And I think we talked about this not a couple of DevRel-ish episodes ago, and like the long-term impact of the decline of Twitter for dev advocacy, because it very much went hand in hand. But I think it goes down to building actual relationships. I've probably been a lot heavier recently in, I will not subscribe to everybody's newsletter. I used to, now I won't. I will mute people on every platform. I mute a ton of people because I'm like, I'm getting stressed just watching your content. And if your content is stressing me out, then I don't need to be consuming it.
Right.
And it's also, I think the thing is like, one of the things I'm very impressed with how you've handled it, and I've always admired like how you approach content creation on LinkedIn, is the balancing that not being afraid to be yourself. Like, and I think especially like there's this pressure to, I love how Henry put it with the Dockers and the cotton, like get the chinos out in the Dockers and like be your best Chad on the internet, so to speak, which is very much why I avoided LinkedIn. Like, yeah, it's just not me. And so that's why I avoided it, because I'm not someone who wears a suit. I have hot pink hair and tattoos, and you're probably not going to, I'm not going to your office from a 9 to 5. Like, you will not catch me in an office for a 9 to 5, because I would drive all of you nuts and get nothing done.
Yeah, I post plenty of posts I don't want to post. And then there are posts where I can just let it rip, and I'm like, I'm proud of this. And so I have to be myself, or else I would dread it. Like I said, there are plenty of posts that I'm like, all right, there she goes. It's probably going to tank, so I'm just going to log out. But then there are posts where I'm like, I am proud of this. And I am very comfortable putting myself out there because I enjoy the process of doing it. And so being myself and like putting myself out there has helped me figure out the pieces that not only my audience is comfortable reading and they know that that is a side of me, but also figuring out what I enjoy writing. And what I enjoy writing is just like general career development, things I learned in my last job search. And those things don't have to do with my current job or what my company does, but I just like telling those stories. And I have an endless like backlog of things to talk about there because I could just go on and on and on for days. And so none of those stories involve me wearing a suit, cotton dockers, whatever, right? But it like even if nobody read it, I'd be like, I enjoy writing this, so I'm gonna continue doing it.
Yep. Yeah, that I would agree with that. I think, you know, social media and I have always been I'm much more of a private person. Even though you see me like I'm on this thing, I'm on like and I'm like I watch people who are very good at sharing and they share a lot about themselves and I'm like I try and I'm like it just doesn't fit me. But just I mean I know it. This is why like I'm not don't have millions of followers, so it's fine.
But I think
I'm
like
comfortable with
it's
that.
also different. Like there are things that I share on TikTok that I won't share on LinkedIn. Like it's almost, and this is something that I've personally started to struggle with probably only this year is my comedy hobby took off to a little bit more than a hobby. But then there's people who are in my comedy world that are like, you do what? Like they have zero interest at all in my tech life. They're like, yeah, we don't care about that. Go back to telling jokes, Erin. But like, how about? And then it's interesting because like people in tech know that I do comedy on the side, and they're like, okay, I'm fast forwarding past, and it's interesting because like Instagram is like the throw all feed for me. Like it's like I will repost anybody's stories. Like I will have memes. I have 1,000 pictures of my dog. Like you'll see my husband on there. And so it's funny because they get people to like that's where both audiences seem to comment like with one or the other. But I don't post a lot of like my day job stuff. Very rarely. It's like unless I'm going to a conference.
Right.
Have they asked me to fix my phone? No, but I have gotten a lot of fix my website. It's built on Wix, which no shit on Wix, but I'm like, I don't want to. No, I'm not. I can't. I don't know how to do that, and I'm not fixing your website for free. And hey, will you edit my reel or my video? No, I barely edit my own videos, so no.
Mm.
That's the comedy side that I ask.
Editing videos, oh my god.
They're reels?
Yeah, there's reels
They do?
editing.
They ask you to
Yeah.
That's
There's a
just-
whole, honestly, people could make good money just editing reels and editing content for comedians and like theater people. There's an entire business that could be done out there, and it's someone that is not me because I don't want to.
So
that's why I haven't
as
posted
a
on
quick
TikTok in so long.
as a quick side note on that, I've tried editing and those and it's just I don't do a very good job of it. So I've been trying with moderate success. I'm just not consistent enough. There's a tool. There's a bunch of AI tools, but like the one I found that I like is called Opus Clips or Opus Clip.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I'll like at the end of today, I'll feed this into Opus Clip, and it'll actually find chunks based on some keywords that I give it of like that you can tell it like how long you want and stuff like that. And it'll find the chunks and reformat it. And the nice thing it does, I'm not this is not a pitch for Opus Clip, but so far I've been happy. Like it'll actually take like this wide video and it'll find the people and it'll put them in the format that fits on the
What?
phone. Yeah, and
It is
add
pretty
like the
cool.
transcript and stuff like that. So like I'm like, okay, I instead of it's I've had moderate success like with it so far in terms of I've had a couple things like one or two things get a lot of people and then most of the other stuff get not that many, but I think that's more a factor of like the channel than the tool. So anyway, it's cool and it saves me like I'll put up one that I spent maybe 5 minutes on as opposed to editing them before. The pain was it just took me so long, going through the video, finding the stuff. It's like, yeah. Anyway.
Content
And
creation is hard.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we are nearing our time. And we have Megan, so I have to tell every guest about this because the show is DevRelish, and yes, we have a nice play on words on relish, and so like every episode we have a pickle fact, and I'm hoping that Erin has a
I
pickle
do have a
fact
pickle
for us
fact.
because she's
It's a
so
pickle and a sauerkraut adjacent fact today.
Okay.
okay. So the other thing, Megan, you may not know is that Erin is a pickler herself. So this was like perfect confluence of things that like Erin and I asked Erin to do this show that was all
Love
pickle
that.
themed, and then only to find out, hey, Erin's a pickler.
This was when some people made pandemic sourdough. I was pandemic fermenting, and I took everything out of our apartment at the time. And living in New York, you have an abundance of cabinet space, and by that I mean none. So I took everything because you need a dark, cool space to pickle. I took everything out and like made like all of our pots and pans were like on the counter then, and my husband was like, "You were absolutely nuts! Like, what are you doing?"
Erin is pickling.
But
Yep.
2 weeks later, he was like, "I will never complain again because those pickles were really good."
Nice.
But I will share actually today's pickle fact comes from an experience I had this weekend, and then I Googled the history of it because I was the person to Google at a bar. So the origin of a pickleback shot, which there is debate among the origin of it. Brian's giving me a look, but it is
I'm like, what is a pickleback shot?
A whiskey.
Okay.
Followed by a shot of pickle juice, and it actually
hell
has
no.
the sting of the alcohol. If you've never had one, you do recommend having one. There is a debate on if it has existed in the southern United States, or actually Bushwick Country Club in Bushwick, New York, which is I used to live in Bushwick, New York. I now live in Greenpoint. But a local bar here in Greenpoint, which is known for a Polish immigrant neighborhood, has a sourback, which is a twist on it with Polish vodka and sauerkraut brine. But that is your fun fact, is there is a big debate on where the pickleback shot originally came from, but it is a very American, quote unquote, hipster drink is what they call it. And the iOS 17 is letting me know that we need balloons. That's the other latest update, if you haven't heard that.
Oh my God.
I thought somebody triggered that.
Wait, how did you do that?
You just have to like this.
What?
If you have your computer and you're on iOS and you're on a Mac and you've done the latest update, it went off. Some people say it because this is another fun fact that there was a Verge article that came out because it kept appearing in people's therapy, like virtual therapy calls. So iOS had to release a statement because people could be like having a moment in therapy and their camera would do like balloons or fireworks. I had fireworks. I don't know how I triggered them the other day, but
that is so funny.
Yeah, there is. I forgot. There's a way you can trigger them. It's such a pointless thing.
Like I'm like, what would you do with that effect? Because like I never. It's like there's an emoji one on Zoom that I had to disable too.
Yeah.
So there's your pickle fact of the day.
That was a good pickle fact. I suppose big debate is relative. I'm wondering how big this is. It's like a couple of guys in a bar up in the Northeast. They're like, yeah, no, we invented it.
It's actually a female patron is rumored to have mentioned it.
Okay.
It was actually picklebacks were invented by a woman. So
love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I will give it a try.
Nick says no relation to Nickelback.
No relation to Nickelback. If you Google here is an article that says the Bushwick is the origin, but yeah, some people say it is a Southern thing, depending on the website you go to. And my Googling at the bar did not do that.
We've now, Megan, you have something you can use for future LinkedIn posts. We're gonna be like following Megan, and she's gonna be like, "Well, I've been researching more about the pickleback." And
pickleback. I love that. Have you guys ever had a pickleball fact?
I have not.
What's a pickleball?
Pickleball?
Pickleball, like pickleball, the game.
Like the game?
Sport. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait, I'm trying to like think of like I'm actually imagining.
There was a really good snarky article in our local New York paper about pickleball in the last year.
I bet it was
It's
snarky.
become a thing now.
It's
I
become a
have
thing.
never played it.
But like,
Okay.
yeah.
So we are unfortunately out of time. This was a ton of fun, Megan. We're really grateful to have you here. So for folks who want to, get in touch with you, obviously they can find you on LinkedIn. Is there this is your opportunity to just tell us how to get in touch with you or anything, if you want to pitch any projects you're working on or anything like that.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there 24/7, literally. And then find me on Deepnote's website, deepnote.com. I'll be on the blog a lot, so you'll see my name sprinkled occasionally throughout there. But yeah, it's mostly LinkedIn until I find the time to actually diversify. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So really appreciate everybody who attended this week. We just to give you some updates for those of you still watching, we've got some good stuff coming up this Friday. We've got Nick Taylor's going to be digging into Next.js Conf is Thursday. And so the very next day, Nick is going to be like grabbing the new Next stuff and trying it out. So that's on Friday at 1 p.m. And then on Tuesday on Halloween, we are hosting Haunted DevOps for those of you interested in DevOps. It's going to be like 5 speakers, all DevOps topics, some really great talks. So that should be a lot of fun too. So yeah, until then, we'll be announcing a new DevRel very, very soon. So look for that as well. So until next time, thanks everybody. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks Megan for listening and joining in and chatting with us. Words and picklebacking with us.
Where are my balloons?
Yeah, come on, balloons. Now I can't get it to turn on again.
It never works when you want it to.
Damn it, Apple.